typical for Western society, because there it's winner take all, you direct. But for leadership, leaders look down to get support and to find mainstream. So they are actually very much part of the system. Leaders are also basically followers of the common sense that exists within their society. So I think the biggest difference between, so who are the Japanese? I would say that they are more or less an organism. An organism where people gradually move up, but being up doesn't mean that you're actually at the top of the pyramid in the Western sense. It's more or less a position that is given to you, but where it's your responsibility to actually take the interest of everybody within that organism, the same organism, to heart. So therefore, there is not a clear individual that here sits an individual that ultimately delegates to the rest of his organization, but it's a clear individual, and here it's this organism, and it's very where we are engaging with each other. You can clearly see, like, okay, we don't know who to talk to, who to reach, how to grasp a clear person. So we are always looking for this kind of person, and to actually move everybody else in this other organism. When it comes to Japan, we don't know where to begin, where to start. So I would say that is the biggest difference between Japan and West.
I think one of the good resources to understand the structure, the great learning. I think it can give you one hint to understand. And based on my understanding between about the difference between the Western countries and Japan, or Japan and all other countries, yours the figure is very close to my understanding, and all other countries, people think about the situation between good and bad. Always such kind of opposing side.
Right.
They try to put, or they try to understand which side you are always.
Right.
But in the case of Japan, the structure, understanding of the society is slightly different. We think about the society as the multi-layered the spheres. More
right.
in the center, there is a mind, and the individual, and the family, and the nation, and the world. This is our understanding based on the teachings of Confucius, which was written in late line.
Actually, I remember this because I was in university.
Yes.
In university, and we were all fascinated by Japan because you were soon going to dominate the world and become the richest country in the world, and we were all stunned, like as economists especially, what explains Japan and why are they so successful? And this was a diagram. Indeed, like this spherical diagram. This was in my book.
But this is, I think, the other reason. She knows about World War II, Asian Great War, Japanese soldiers, what did in Southeast Asia. He knows very well. And the Japanese invasion style is completely different from Western world. And of course, they did some massacre, they killed a lot of people, but invasion style is completely different from the rest of the world, different from the Western world. So he knows very well. He taught us before. So they try not to simply invasion. Always the Japanese people considering how to unify with the local people, except China. China is just exactly waging war, but Southeast Asia is not waging war, just occupied. And the occupation style is different from how to manage the local people, different from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yes. Going back to the teachings of Confucianism, which was written in the Red Warnings, of course, Chinese people, of course, read the book, and they knew that, but they did not exercise that. And the sinocentrism is one of the very typical things, and of course, they tried to spread their cultures around them. But one of the biggest objective to do that was to spread their culture and to unify the other culture of the Chinese. But they forced them to forced them the obedience to the imperial court of the dynasty. But in the case of Japan, we also interpreted, understand about the teachings of Confucianism. But our idea is basically the spherical, multi-layered structures. So that so one of the example is the moment when Japan tried to combine the Joseon and also Taiwan. From the Western people, from the aspect of Western people, it is similar with occupation and invasion, same with other European people, European nations. But truth is not like that. So again, we think if we think that area is our, in the case of like Joseon Peninsula and Taiwan, we just spread our countries, and even though we tried to make their the environment in any aspect by funding the people and monies or whatever, more than the main our countries.
Yeah, but
So that's why Taiwan, Joseon could have the foundation for their independence after the World War II.
Like one example is 3 years ago, Japanese government supported South Sudan developing agricultural national plan.
Right.
And that plan was very, very prepared. And Japanese people is just only for supporting South Sudan. Okay? But they were going to execute this plan or not, but we don't know. But the Japanese people, they try to devote for kind of plan without any calculation. This is a typical case Japanese contribute to the rest of the world. But European people, none of the countries try to doing that in Africa. Right?
So this is where Takashi-san comes in. Is that true, Takashi-san?
Comes in.
Japan tries to help the rest of the world without any calculation.
Sorry?
So Uno-san says that Japan is trying to help other countries in the world without calculation.
Yeah, we should say this.
Sorry, I'm going to put the volume up a little bit. Sorry.
No, you can listen.
Saying,
Oh.
Yeah, Uno-san knows well.
What you're saying is there is calculation or there is no calculation?
Yeah, according to them, it should be without.
Right. But according to you?
I don't know. Okay, I'm trying to follow.
I do not agree.
there is several nice books to know how
Just a moment. He just disagrees. Say something.
So to know the how we governed the Joseon and the Taiwan. One of the good book is the New Korea, which was written by the Ireland. He was foreigner and also the specialist. He said he was a specialist of the study of the colonization. And that book was written in 1926, before the too much bias appeared because of the, for example, the conflict between Korea and Japan. So, and also he is the outsider. He was outsider anyway. And if we think about the year of the publish of that book, that was 1926. That was exactly the middle of the governing the Joseon by Japan. That lasted from 1905 to the 1945. So,
Right.
so that and also he himself said that I try to explain about the situation in Korea without any try to say their personal opinion, but
Right.
he tried to explain about the situation simply based on the statistics in a variety of the way, like the population, production, or birth rate, or whatever, based on the statistics there. So maybe it would be nice to know how the Japanese government did at that moment to the Joseon. And in the case of Taiwan, one good example is the story of the Hatta Yoichi. Do you know?
Yep.
He was the engineer of the Gensei. He built a huge dam in Taiwan. And as a result of that, the production of the rice extremely increased in Taiwan. So after that, they could afford and food feed rate, you said, exceeded more than 100% after that. Because of that huge dam, the Kanan Taishu, Kanan plain, could be converted to the rice fields. And every Taiwan people knew his name. And that is one of the example. And also another example is sewage system.
Sewage system.
The Taiwan was the first place in the Japanese territory at that moment where the sewage system was realized before the mainland of Japan. And or other the modernized the social infrastructure were advanced more than the original Japan territory. So that means we sent the best of the best things for them. Situation is the same with the Joseon.
Right. Okay.
And
But I mean, if I would reflect that on most of the colonies, like for example, if you say, well, we look at statistics, we look at numbers, then for example, under the Dutch rule in Indonesia, there was a lot of great infrastructure has been developed. There is the Grote Postweg, which is a big road that connects north to south Java. There were schools, there were churches, there were all kinds of there was healthcare was developed. That's all true, but if you look at the reality, then building that infrastructure, that Grote Postweg, that resulted in enormous human casualties. It indeed stimulated the economy, and it grew Indonesia, and some people still, even after Indonesia became independent, if you talk to a lot of people, you could talk to them and say, well, when the Dutch were here, everything was much better. We were more wealthier. There was less corruption. There was this and that. But a lot of people didn't agree with that because they were suppressed. The Dutch had no place being there. They should not have been there in the first place. It's almost impossible to be impartial in this. And I think in almost any colony there are exceptions, like the Congo and other countries. There were also some good things being done, but there were also bad things being done. So the entire story with every colony. I think there were hardly any colonializators who were only out there to pursue their own self-interest. They also had their conscience, like we had this Christian religion, so we put churches everywhere. We thought that was our Christian duty. But the main driver was not to spread religion. I think there were other drivers. For every country was different. For every person, individual, it was different. It's very difficult to say we were mainly beneficiary or we were mainly. That is very much dependent on your tachiba, where you stand.
Some part, in some, partially I agree with you, and even if under the colonization of the Dutch, Indonesia might have some good things, as you said. But one of the criteria, whether that, I don't say colonization, but governing, that nations were good or not, could be judged by the people's life, generic or holistic people's life. And in the case of Taiwan and Korea, their food feed rate exceeded 100% after we tried to change their society or infrastructure or whatever. But in the case of governing by the Western countries or the Asian countries, almost every countries lost their food feed rate, decreased. They themselves could not afford their food without the support from the main governing nations. Like in the case of Indonesia.
Well, we taxed them 20% of all the revenue from the land. There was this program where every farmer needed to allocate 20% of his farmland as a tax.
But before the occupation of Dutch, Indonesia had more than 100% food feed rate there. But after that,
food feed rate is self-sufficiency, or what does that mean?
Sufficiency, yes. Yeah. And after the start of the governing of Dutch, as a result of that, because one of the objective of every the Western countries, they tried to change the cropping or the field to create the product what they would like to have.
Tobacco and tea.
But the situation is totally different.
Do you understand how many years Dutch occupied Indonesia?
From about 14,000 to the start of the World War II.
1400? No. The Netherlands didn't even exist yet.
300 years.
Yeah, around 17.
Anyway,
and I just some question for actually agriculture in Indonesia production, especially agriculture production, mainly export to Dutch.
Yeah, right.
Not like Japanese people did in Southeast Asia.
Right.
So basically, we were there to make money. That's
right.
We were not.
Yes.
It was it started as a business.
Yes, that's all.
It was business, but it gradually changed. It became Dutch, And but if you look at how much money we made from Indonesia, that was actually not that much anymore. After it stopped, it ceased being a business. It was actually more or less a tang-tang operation. We were not making money anymore. We were trying to make ends meet.
So that is not for the people. Right. But in the case of Japan, we did that for their people, for those people.
You went to Korea for the Koreans?
Yes. For their people. So that the numbers.
I give you a question.
Yeah, numbers told you. Regardless of any interpretations of qualitative opinions for me.
But I don't know why.
If you see the numbers,
I have no idea why, and why are so few people in Korea so happy with that?
yeah, they are so happy at that moment.
Not happy, but
yes, the nature of the.
It's not what history tells.
So the Korean people are totally different from Taiwan people. So that after the World War II,
in Taiwan, I know that there's a very positive.
Yes.
Why
But
we did
the same amount of the effort to both of those two countries. So that again, I think it may be worth for you to read that book. That is an English book, and you can read, and you can reach the real numbers.
Which one?
Numbers.
Korea?
The New Korea by R.N. Ireland. Which was written in 1926.
That's another guy.
Okay,
not
his eye for Korea is a little bit biased, and you can have a look Wikipedia, the Korean history. It's tell the truth.
Wikipedia is not good.
Yeah, but this is Wikipedia English version is very good. Japanese is different, completely different.
I fundamentally say
Korea different.
I never trust the Wikipedia, especially talk about the Korea and China and always biased and because those are
So the mistake is not mistake. English version is fairly neutral. Japanese is very much biased.
But even so,
did you know that Japanese English different? Did you know that? Okay, different.
But it is also worth to reach the first material before any bias appear.
Did you read Korean history in Wikipedia? Did you?
No.
You should read it. This is very fairly described.
But always I try to read on the both sides, especially talk about the Korean case, because there are two parties.
Because I written book, so I read a lot of materials for Korea. And,
so that so what I would like to say is our situation is totally different. The reason and the motivation was totally different from European countries, and that because.
But why go to Korea to actually? What was the idea? Like a kind of religious spread the religion of Japan?
No, that is not also the right understanding of our situation. We are not spreading, but we try to keep our national securities, and also based on the under the international law, we try to control them first. That was yes. Yes,
but you don't have to be in their country to control them. I mean, that's not how international relations work. It does not control them by going there. That's invasion.
No, not like that. Because at the first moment we tried to support them after the Sino-Russo, and also the Chosen Peninsula is one of the middle of the conflict. The same with the Crimea or the Balkan Peninsula. There are always the conflict exists, and in the case of Japan, during the whole through the long history, always Chosen Peninsula causes issues. So that we hope the stabilization of that areas in any way, anyhow. And the good thing is they themselves could control the conflict. But at that moment, the China and Russia tried to invade there. And as a result of that, there are so many conflicts there before we sent the troops. And if we did nothing, soon after the Chosen would be occupied by the China or maybe Russia. And next, what happens? That was our threat. So that's why we tried to stabilize there, to push out the Russia and China from Chosen. But
his opinion is Japanese side opinion. Russia tried to invade, China tried to invade, Japan also tried to invade.
Yes. Exactly.
That was the very the final.
But they did this. Okay. Well, but to me it sounds like then there were 3 dogs fighting for a bone.
So that apparently it seems it may be seen like that, but the strategy was totally different. The China and Russia sent the troops there to control by the military force. But in our case, yeah, of course we sent a very small military force, but the first objective was to stabilize that areas by supporting the Chosen government at that moment, Li dynasty. But unfortunately, after the long time of the obedience to the China, they almost lost their power to govern the whole the areas. So that's why we sent the advisors at the same time with the troops to protect them.
Right.
Yes.
Let's see.
And Germany sent China sent also the advisors, whose name was what's it? He was sent from Germany to the Shanghai once, and as an advisor to the China. And the Chinese government asked Germany to send their advisor to the Chosen. And they tried to control the Chosen. And Russia also sent the advisor. And finally, the Li dynasty tried to be the part of the China. That was a nightmare for us. And Russia also tried to protect that. So they are forced to capture the son of the king, and they take them to their.
Who's they? Who's they? They. Who
Russia.
captured? Russia captured the son, the prince.
Yeah.
But the son of King Li.
Right. At the end of the history of Li dynasty, there are a few years when the dynasty exists in the diplomatic office of Russia there.
They captured the son of King Li in order to break the relation with China
And Japan.
and Japan.
Yes.
So King Li had a relation with both China and with Japan.
Excuse me.
So now I try to understand. So why did Russia capture this son of King Li in order to break the alliance with China?
At that moment, the Li dynasty apparently had obedience to the China. But after the scene of Russo-Japanese War, we had a right to control that Chosen Peninsula officially. But still, China tried to have the effect to the Li dynasty as ever. and that's why
Because Lee wanted to become independent of Japan, or why was Lee?
yeah, that's the point.
Hmm.
So as I said, that moment, as the very last moment of the Lee dynasty, they already lost their idea how to govern their nations. So that if Lee dynasty had a strong power to govern their own nations, nobody could touch them. But what can I say? At that moment, the Lee dynasty had they themselves also had a struggle in the imperial court to take the powers, and what can I say? Oshoku, too much Oshoku caused inside the imperial courts, and so that and actually they did not have a power, and every moment they changed their attitude, which nation they were going to obey or ask the support.
Like
Such kind of
Egypt.
Such kind of instability situation was the most worst situation. So that's why we, and also maybe China also, Russia also tried to put the Chosen under their powers. But we, Japan, have a right to do that.
Why?
Because after the World War II, Sino-Russo War, we had a Shimonoseki Shoyaku. That is after the Sino-Japanese War. And between the Russia and Japan, we won at the Russo-Japanese War, and we had a right to control the Chosen Peninsula after that.
But they didn't have right for self-governance?
They have. So that it depended on how the Japanese tried to do that about them.
Because it sounds a bit strange to me that you have the right to invade another country.
No.
Control another country.
As I said, so throughout the whole history, that area is a center of the conflict between the China, Russia, and Japan. And
but it was a country, right? It was.
Yes.
It was not. It was.
The
It was
dynasty.
like a
independent.
nation.
Apparently independent.
Yes.
But as I said, they lost almost the power to control their whole countries.
Right.
So that there are variety of the situation could be expected. Russia might invade, China might invade, and those two scenarios were the scenario which Japan would like to avoid.
Right.
So that's why we would like to have the support them to
But
keep
it's
them-
very subjective. You could be 100% right, right, but from your point of view. But from the other point of view, you could be 100% wrong because you just like Japan just invaded Chosen and just like China would have or Russia would have.
That is not the invasion because we sent the advisor and the military force based on the international
That's
law.
exactly what the United States always does. They always send advisors and military. That's exactly the same. I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong or you're right. Actually, I don't know anything about this part of history, so I cannot make a fair
But
judgment about it.
At the same time, we didn't have any intention to occupy them, and
But you
we
did.
did not. And so, as I said, to help their independence and to help.
But that is just at which side of the table you're sitting on.
But as a result of that, there are life environment of the ordinary people increased drastically.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So,
That's the result.
right.
And you can reach that result from the numbers without any bias
Right.
from his book.
Right.
So that so please read that once.
Right.
Then I would like to
But
hear
I'm
your
just
opinion.
because I'm simply what I'm saying is that I feel that people should have the right to govern themselves, and it really depends on where you're sitting. I think that it's very difficult
every company, every nation have their own situation.
Right. I don't think we have any business. We had any business in Indonesia. We didn't have any business in like Taiwan. We didn't have any business.
That is the okay, say the difference of the viewpoint between Japan and or other Western countries. So again, we were not trying to occupy them, but we thought that area was.
But actually, if you would ask any person, a lot of people there, we were doing a lot of good there. We were helping them to develop, etc. Seriously. But looking back on history, I say, well, we are trying to develop them. My ass, we were not trying to develop them. We were, on the other hand, we were giving them ones, and we were taking.
The holistic view is important. So in every occupation, there will be the good part and bad part.
Exactly.
But one thing we may be able to judge whether it was good or bad for their people can be seen from the statistics of that nations. And one of the key index will be the sufficiency of the food.
I don't know whether that is a good combination. Of course, also we don't know. But we also don't know what would have happened if they would have not been occupied.
And in the case of Indonesia, as a result of the governing of the Dutch, the several cities or towns were banished. Because they could not.
Right, but education was there. There was infrastructure was left. We left healthcare system that wasn't there before. So you could say we did lots of good things.
But on the other
I would not agree with that.
But on the other hand, they lost their power to govern by their own.
Okay. And what did Japan do? They gave power back? No.
Yes.
They established power there to self-govern them.
So that's why
it became a mess after that.
So that's why during the independence war of Indonesia, Indonesia and Japan fought together against the Dutch.
No, I'm talking about Korea.
Oh, Korea?
Yes.
Yeah, Korea is also
completely destabilized.
Korea is also same. Yeah, we helped them, and their life qualities increased drastically after our governing. That is true.
I think
the numbers
you have a very one-sided view on the affair.
No. The number is the truth.
No.
Number is
No. There are liars. There are big liars. There are awfully big liars, and there are statisticians. There is no such thing as truth in numbers.
But their life quality increased. This is true.
Yeah, okay. Education increased.
Yes.
Healthcare increased.
Yes.
Infrastructure increased.
Yes.
GDP increased
Yes.
During our time in Indonesia. Yet, we didn't do a lot of good for Indonesia. That's what I would say. We can look at the same statistics. I don't know, but I think that there is you cannot say I'm right or I'm wrong because based on numbers and based on this or that. There is always in looking from this person's perspective, you are right. But there is always people who have other interests and say you're wrong. So I cannot say we were wrong or we were right. I think in the eyes of for many people in Indonesia, we should not have been there. That we had no right, no business being there. But on the other hand, a lot of people in Indonesia also declared later and said, we did a lot of good.
That aspect is again the difference between the European countries and Japan. Because we had, going back to the main track of the topics we started the discussion, we had this kind of idea to understand the society. So that's why we didn't have any intention to occupy the other countries. So it is hard to understand for the European people because most of the European people cannot understand the deeper teachings of the Confucianism.
Right.
How the Japanese people understood about the idea of the Confucianism. So unless the understanding the how Japanese people interpret and practice all throughout our history, it is very hard to understand our the policy to think about our the many Asian countries around us. How we think about them. The fundamental philosophy is different. The aspect is different.
He doesn't tell a lie, but I have a couple of questions from Korea, okay? And Japanese occupied Korea in 1910. At that time, Japanese government in Korea decided to get real estate from Chosen people. 37% of that real estate in Chosen. All those people, they lost land because the government, Japanese government, tried to invite Japanese farmers to get into Chosen. So 37% lost land. What they did is actually they can't sustain their life. So what they did is almost everybody sell their wife and daughter to as a concubine or just for brothers, everybody. This is one thing that happened from 1910 to 1920. 37 all land, okay? Just take from Korean chosen people, the farmers, they lost land. Second point is, I can't remember the year, 1923 or 5. They tried to make an independent movement, very famous March 1st independent movement. This is still Korea's Memorial Day. So this one is, how do you think about it? These two issues. Just what you said is right, okay? The big growth. And Chosen is big success. But the other aspect, we had two issues. They have lot of things and another opinion, but this one is they sell the wife and daughter because they lost land. Total territory 37%. Okay? Second is March 1st is independent movement. Why independent movement is the Japanese police killed a lot of people.
That is a very small portion of the whole holistic view.
Yes, yeah, I know, but they killed almost 10,000.
You know, there are many records exist how the Japanese government governed the Chosen, and especially talking about the law enforcement. We put the what is it, Chosen people as the top always, and we support them because if when we may have some opportunity for them for the independence, we tried to help them for them to establish their own countries.
Who's coming?
My friend. So
your friend?
So that is the intention. So that's why. So there is a name list or whatever in every district of the Chosen who will be the boss and who will be the blah blah blah. And if we saw that list, our policy of to enforce the law enforcement system is very clear. And also one of the Japanese people wrote about he worked once as the kind of I forget after his occupation in Chosen, but he wrote about what he experienced under the governing of the Japanese government of the Chosen, and what happens between Japanese people and the ordinary Chosen people there. There's no big conflict. Yeah, of course there was such kind of the movement. But that was one aspect. There are also to the people who had the powers before during the dynasty. So that always such kind of people who had complaints.
Yeah.
The new things.
Yeah, okay, but it's not in everybody's best interest. So it really depends on which side you stand from, where you see the reality. So there is no such thing as right or wrong. This was in our best interest. So you always need to. I believe that if you look at history, it's very difficult to say, okay, this was good and this was not good. It was good for some people, it was bad for other people. There is always this balance. We also gave people power, for example, but that was more under the pretext of divide and rule. So control by giving some people power to help to actually establish control.
Yeah, but
so it's very difficult to.
But it is also true. So to judge whether the situation was holistically good or bad for the people who live there. For example, talking about such kind of situation, current Japan also have such kind of situation. Some people are, happy with the current situation, but some people it doesn't. Right. Such kind of situation always happen. But at this moment, roughly speaking, holistically, current situation in Japan is maybe peaceful and maybe good for the most of the people. We can judge in such a way. So if we judge the situation in the Chosen, it is also possible in such a kind of a judgment, right?
Okay. Well, let's ask the people in
By the way,
how they feel about it.
By the way, March 1st is anniversary day of Korea and Chosen. Okay, independent movement, very famous day. So I think we need to persuade the European people what Japanese people thinking about Chosen or Korea. So this is very important. So how do you think about comfort women?
Comfort woman, 100% right. Comfort woman, it is the propaganda, 100% propaganda.
How do you persuade the European people?
To explain about the history of the propaganda of the comfort woman who studied that. And one of the good example was the negotiation between Korea and Japan after the in 1965. So after the World War II, we evacuated from evacuation. It's not the good experience, but anyway, we returned to Japan, and Korea had a right to be independent. And but soon after, they had the Chosen War there, and they I think 1952 the Hudson declared the Hudson Line, which is the line to split the territory between Japan and the Chosen, middle of the Sea of Japan. And it was also the declaration which territory United States or GHQ is going to control. And just after that, Lee Shouban, I'm not sure.
What's the president?
The president of the Korea, he also declared East Sunman Line. And at that moment, he drew the lines to include our territories a little bit. And after that, he captured the fishermen, Japanese fishermen, and the fishermen's boat. And eventually, they started from 1952 to the 1965. 1965 was the year when Japan and Korea had a treaty Japan, Korea, I'm not sure the name of the treaty, but and as a result of that, we paid about 800 million US dollars
Yes.
as the name of the
Compensation.
or yeah. And also, during the 1952 to 1965, more than 4,000 Japanese people were captured.
Compensation for what?
War.
War
Apparently,
compensation.
war
War.
compensation.
Everything from when to when?
Everything
Yeah.
from Japan to Korea. And at that moment, the Korean government asked the Japanese government that we were going to pay, we are going to split that compensation between us, Korea, and North Korea. So that Lee Soo-man asked Japanese government the compensation for both two nations. So we paid 800 million US dollars. So that and what I would like to say is that the negotiation of that treaties was last more than 17 years. So that during these 17 years of the negotiation between Korea, South Korea, and Japan, Lee Soo-man never mentioned about the compensation for the comfort room. Never, ever. And before that year, the word, the comfort room itself also did not exist. Why? If Japanese soldier captures about 200,000 the Chosen's woman or the comfort woman, he should mention that there during the agreement of the treaty. But he did not mention about that. And also, if we think about the population of the North Korea, Chosen at that moment, that was about 20 million, just 20 million. And Korea insist was 200,000. That means one of the 100 people of the Chosen people. No.
No, 1,000, but yeah.
200 population is
20 million?
20 million.
Oh, okay.
And,
No, you're right. 20
what
was 2
they
million.
insisted how many the woman
One
was
in 100.
captured,
Hmm.
right? One in 100. Yes. So if 1 in 100, that means that almost all the young people of the Chosen was captured.
Wow.
But such kind of
1 in 100 is not
never,
all young.
never ever happened. And there are so many
So could it be an exaggeration, or it didn't happen at all?
And but I have to mention here is there is the kind of the business to sell their the sexes to the soldiers. But this is not a rare case, only for the Japan, but every other military force, including Western countries, have.
I don't think that's a topic of discussion.
That was the business.
Yeah.
And also, in the case of such kind of people in between Japan and Korea, there are such kind of business women exist. That was true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
And,
yeah. Do you agree?
So that if they, so
Are
if
you enjoying yourself on the side?
So if you agree with the opinion of Korea that Japanese soldier or Japanese government captured about the 200,000 Chosen women, then at the same time, so you have to explain why the Lee Soo-man did not mention about that during the 17 years of the negotiations. So if the comfort woman exists and that issue was so much big, like the current situation where we exist,
Right.
why Lee Soo-man asked the Japanese government about the compensation for that. Why?
Well, I think that's basically what you're saying is okay. Well, it has to be either true or false, not black and white, right? The world is gray, so it's very likely that people who are advocating this comfort woman story, they may actually have a benefit of exaggerating the numbers. That's very often true. Basically, it's just like negotiation. You ask a high price, and you aim for the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. So, but that doesn't make it not true. I believe that's more likely to be gray. I also think it's very likely that, and also giving what Uno-san is saying before about families having to sell their daughters, etc. It's a different time. It's a different moral standard. So undoubtedly, there were many women who were professional prostitutes. But I think there is, but probably, like just thinking about the times there, people may have been poor. People may have actually been brought there by Korean human traffickers who offered those women against their will, against their knowing. I think the point is more, okay, could this have happened? And also, how was it organized? Were women were they free to go when they were enrolled? So who brought them there is one question. How they were treated after they were actually there, and whether they were free to go, that's another question. How many it were, I think that's very difficult to establish. The question is more, did women were they held against their will, and was there a lot of human suffering? I think that is the issue at the table here. The numbers, probably very difficult to understand. I don't think that the Japanese army would have changed. I think that's unlikely. That the Japanese army would have actively tried to capture women and put them under control. What is very likely is that they, at least I think is likely, is that they established these comfort zones, but that the conditions under which these women were forced to work or coerced to work were not something that a lot of women would feel comfortable with, and therefore there was suffering. I think that's the point here. The real point is whether there was suffering. To say it didn't exist or it's 100% lie, that doesn't help the fact that there was real human suffering here.
But the question you talk about right now is a very general question, not only for the the women who sell their sexes to the soldiers.
Right.
Not only the case of Japan, but also all other countries who had post.
Right, but that doesn't mean that it's right. If other countries do it, definitely, I know that in after Japan left and when the Americans stayed in Korea, there were also a lot of things that were going wrong. Yeah. It's not exclusive something that's related to, but the issue here is what we're discussing. What the discussion here is what happened in regards to comfort women. In Korea in relation to the Japanese army.
And so in these specific issues, what is the specific problems which the European people or the Korean people especially care about, and we have to discuss? What is different?
I think the real issue is that basically it's war. In most war, normal people, women, they suffer. There is rape. You
did not understand about the comfort woman issue between Korea and Japan. Only the difference between the such kind of the system during the war was whether the Japanese military force or government are ordered to capture the
Yeah.
the woman or not.
Yeah.
That was only the point,
Right.
the difference, and also the discussion point.
Right.
And and as a result of that, there was no record, there was no evidence.
But I mean that's not the point, right? And you can say okay, that's the point. That's not the point. We're talking about humans here. We're talking about suffering here and about acknowledging that, and not about we were right, we were wrong. It's not black and white. It's about suffering. To put yourselves in the mind of the women that suffered.
Okay, but if there is still insist that aspect
Yes.
is the issue,
Yes.
we already paid the compensation.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful, fantastic,
1965.
very empathetic.
In 1965,
Very empathetic.
we already paid.
No. I don't
Okay,
I don't agree with that.
Okay, then I would like to ask you, what Japanese government have to do that? We already apologized several times in front of them, and also
Right, and then the next time,
what?
it was
should do.
denied immediately. I mean, it was very unfortunate how it was communicated, and every time the same statement had been issued, literally.
No.
Yeah.
You did not understand the history between the Korea and Japan. What they did during our histories, without knowing the Korean histories, between in terms of the relationship with Japan, you never understand.
Okay, just a moment. Your speaking way is you need to American representative, okay? You are Japanese representative. So you must be more persuasive way, okay? Not emotional.
So that I like to ask you about the best answer, best solution for us.
As current suspending issue is why I throw the ball for you, because you're going to persuading American diplomat. American people, none of those people believe Japanese didn't do some wrongdoing or confusion. They believe did wrongdoing, and he is a representative of American diplomat. So how do you going to explain for him?
Okay.
Not emotion.
No. I always try to be the So that I have as I said, I have one question. What do you think is ideal way to solve this issue?
I think, but really, seriously, I think the best example of how this issue should have been resolved. Look at Willy Brandt, what he did in Israel when he visited Israel, and against protocol, went out of his way, went on his knees, and truly apologized from the bottom of his heart. And the statement was never retracted. It was never discussed again. And it was he went to Israel there himself in front of everybody, and he apologized. I think that was the perfect example of how to make heartfelt apology. Whatever was done by Japan was paid money, and there was never ever a record of a truly heartfelt apology. I think that is what the Western world wants to see.
So the behind that idea, you insist that the Japanese government did not do that. Still, you think so?
I think so.
We did. We did already several times.
Okay, but then we don't understand. We don't feel the heartfelt apology.
No, your answer is we did apology, remorse, not kidding. Son of a bitch. So you need to officially respond to him. How are you going to say?
What do you mean? What do you mean? I don't know. I don't know what he is asking either. What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
He knows that. He knows true story. So, but he knows true story. But 100% Japanese people never happened to persuade American diplomat in the past. Okay, everybody failed, including Prime Minister. Nobody could not persuade American people. Okay, so this fact never happened before. But nobody successfully persuade what happened. But he knows that. So I'm telling him, not the fact, how to persuade the people. This kind of debate, right?
How to persuade.
Yeah, this is very important. None of Japanese success to persuade non-Japanese people comfort women. There's nothing happened before. But none of those. Just everybody, are you going to change history? No kidding. Bullshit, they said. Okay? So how are you going to explain it?
I think I already explained everything.
Okay, I'm not persuaded. I'm not persuaded. No, seriously.
So
I'm not
this is one thing, okay?
But I really think, Sonoda-san, like, it's very difficult to look back at what happened and who played what and who did what. But I don't think there is a real right and wrong here. The reality is that people suffered, soldiers suffered, women suffered, everybody. And I really feel that maybe even though your intentions were good, people suffered. And if I have caused people to suffer, then I feel that there should acknowledge that, even though maybe it was not my intention or it was for whatever reason it happened. But if people suffered, I believe as to my doing or my wrongdoing, then I believe that a true apology is in place, a heartfelt apology. It is emotion to emotion, and it's something that cannot capture it in money or in the mind. This is something that you can only resolve from the heart.
Yeah, I understand what you said in general, and we already did. And additionally, we agreed with between the Japanese government and the Korean government last 2 years ago about additional 1 billion yen paid with the apology from Prime Minister. What else Japanese government has to do? The Prime Minister have to do the dogeza in front of all the Korean peoples, or the president of the Moon Jae-in. Is that a solution? What you said, to express the true apologies from the bottom of our heart?
The question is if you feel it. If you don't feel it, then don't apologize, but don't expect any result.
So that anyway, how much and how what can I say, in any ways we do what we express our apology.
Do you understand what doesn't mean?
They never stop.
It's maybe it's going to the floor or not.
Kneeling down.
Yeah.
But in what can I say, diplomatic relations situation, nobody do such a things.
Well, okay. So that's one thing. Like Willy Brandt is
because every moment the such kind of solution for the such kind of issue.
But you're right. It's rare.
Discussion between the government.
It's
right?
rare. Well, it's rare. I mean, so take for example England. England in relation to India. They made an apology, but not about the core issue that they let millions of Indians die in the war because they felt that they didn't want to give the food that was grown in Bangladesh to the Indians.
Do you know the Britain how to solve this issue? Do you know how to solve Britain to settle down this issue?
Well, I think
actually, in 1942, they killed 3 million Indian people.
Right.
For
they starvation. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So again,
but the Indian people government never criticized British after the incident a couple of years ago. Do you know how they're going to Britain solve it?
How they resolved it?
Yeah.
I don't know how they resolved it.
Never Britain apologized to India.
Right, for that issue. No,
but
I don't think they took a small matter and make that an apology instead of.
At that time, Cameron told to Indian people.
We are all Indian, right?
Yes,
yeah,
and
yeah,
also,
yeah,
do you know that Queen Elizabeth said something?
Yeah.
Do you know what she said to India? This is a major issue that said the problem. She said something.
Was that not
People-
the same
people
words?
come
Like,
and go
like
to India.
we are all India?
Just before going to India. What do you know what she said?
No?
Okay. Our Queen family has the blood of India.
Right.
That's all.
Oh.
Then India is count. Okay. And Cameron went just after that. Cameron went to visit India.
So we're, yeah.
India is my second home. So no criticize the settle. But actually they killed 3 million people 1942.
By denying them food.
Yeah.
Because it was.
That is, again, as you said,
But Japanese emperor told in year 2000 we have Korean blood. Year 2000 we have Korean blood in my family. He said, but nothing improved.
You know what? Yeah,
I didn't know that actually. Is that true?
Officially said.
Even
Really?
Yes. Year 2000. You can check the history.
Oh, I didn't know.
Japanese emperor.
The emperor
officially, yeah, no.
It's very strange. The emperor
We have-
usually doesn't say anything.
We have
political.
Korean blood in my family,
Oh,
but nothing happened.
okay.
But still, he need to persuade you.
What's that?
So can I ask? We already spent maybe we only have 30 minutes
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
It is okay for us to continue the
No
discussion?
problem, no problem. This is
Because
just only
today's topic
30 minutes is the time limit.
Confucian
You can persuade him. Okay, going back to the March 4th.
Yeah.
How do you explain for him? This is the anniversary of Korean anniversary for independent movement. They just very strong opinion for the March 4th.
Yeah.
North Korea, South Korea, the same.
Okay.
They believe this is the Memorial Day, the most important day in the whole year. They believe that. But you can say, okay, this is a minor incident in the southern part of the city, and just kind of incident, but they do not agree with you. And also, they support American people support Korea, American people, European people support Korea. So how Japanese people are going to persuade those European people, American people? This is our issue. Otherwise, always Japanese government will going to be criticized. This is the point. This current point, and nobody cannot persuade Korea and persuade American people in the past, even including Obama. Obama criticized Abe. You don't change history, he said. But you said it true, maybe. But none of European people, American people agree with Japanese government saying. This is a problem. Right? Foreign Ministry just homepage. I read everything. All telling just what you said. All telling a lie. Okay? All that writing down, comfortable telling a lie. But none of European people, American people, this is a belief.
So it was an official statement on the.
Yeah.
really?
Foreign Ministry. I just sent my book. You are talking about lie, but they neglected me.
So behind their what they insist, there's no clear evidence about that. No one evidence exists about the comportment.
Yeah, even though no clear evidence or whatever, but Japanese should have pride. Japanese should have dignity, especially for our children, and our grandfather and or more grandfather did what they did. Nothing wrong. So it means we should deny whatever kind of effort we try to make. How much money we're going to spend? We need to deny. But Japanese government, our foreign ministry, never do that. Okay, they agree with the Korean people. We did wrongdoing. Oh, son of a bitch, we need to persuade European people. Or one of those. Okay, he is one of 300 million population.
Right. So, but actually, I'm wondering that. I wonder. So I don't think that we are generally speaking denying wrongdoings that we did in the past. I think in general, if anything, like, I mean, recently in the Netherlands it was reinstated, like Slavery Day, to acknowledge the fact that we have actually enslaved people and brought them to the United States and all around the world. That is a long time ago, but it's actually a very dark page, black page
Dutch?
in our
Dutch,
yes,
yeah.
Dutch, the black page in our history. So we were also involved in slave trade everywhere we could make money, and a lot of people suffered because of that. Now I think it's a bit late to come with apologies for that, and we organize activities and whatever, and try to put that back to life. But I don't know whether it's a good idea to flat out deny that. That's basically not what other countries do, I believe. I don't think that England is actually denying what they did in India.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, they're more or less,
No,
they just don't talk about it.
no, just finished 2 years.
Yeah. So basically, that's time has passed, and
Yeah, so,
right.
but Japanese, emperor did the same thing to year 2000, but they couldn't solve the problem.
So I wonder why there was not more attention to that, because that's actually a very strong
My
statement.
opinion is why Korean people or North Korean people speak out kind of they had something wrong doing Japanese in the past. Okay, why keep speaking? Not simply only comfort women, but historically relationship with Japan. So we need to consider for the root of their complaint.
Right.
Yeah.
Because basically what we're talking about different generations. We're talking about something that we needs to move on. What made us, like, we had a bad relationship with Germany for a long time. It has a history, but actually at the moment the relationship is very good. What made that go around is maybe one of the things is that the Willy Brandt example, the fact that
Why good now?
that they
Why good
they
now?
held. I think there was also like the Schuldenfrage.
What is
Germany made a very public international discussion about their history and why things happened as they happened.
They
Not
apologize
that-
Dutch.
No, I don't
Why
remember
relationship
actually.
improved?
That's a good question. I think actually maybe it had even come to a point where we say, okay, well, Germany. I mean, we are now. They are still very much like putting the guilt on their shoulders. That we thought, okay, but it's gradually time to move on.
What? Why Dutch hates German people before invasion?
Well, because of invasion.
What they did under invasion.
What they did? Well, I mean, they yes, a lot of wrongdoing. There was a lot of wrongdoing.
But why solve these issues?
Oh, okay. So I think that basically, because Germany completely transformed. Like Germany, under the rule of Hitler, was a completely different Germany than Germany after the war. They were an ally in all the international matters. There was a close trade relationship between Germany and the Netherlands. They were our biggest export partner. Basically, we speak the same.
For Japanese, feel very strange. Hitler era and current German
completely
people.
different.
No, same people.
It's the same people. That's right. But actually, you're right, because actually it is the same people, and that's why it took so long. I think that after those people were retired, when that was gone, it was basically the new generation. They learned to speak English. They actually were very critical of their home country, and their role in history, to the extent that we thought a little bit uncomfortable. Like, okay, you had nothing to do with the war. You were born after the war. Maybe your parents had something to do. I have nothing. I cannot be held responsible with what my parents did. I'm not my parents. So they became new. Basically, the second generation built a bridge, and that bridge is now the basis of our international relationship.
Like Sonoda said to you, many people same thing speak out the same issue to overseas people, Westerners.
Right.
But none of the European American people agree with him in the past, okay? For Korea. But how could you solve that issue against Germany? This is still, I don't understand. Same.
How we could resolve them?
I have same T-shirt.
What is theory?
Uniqlo.
Ah.
But by the way,
How can these issues be resolved? I think you can only solve it this way.
I don't understand. Something behind their mind, okay? You call their mind. Still there is some bad feeling against Japanese people.
Yeah.
That's the reason why they are talking about comfortable feeling.
But I also feel that different from the Japanese younger generation, the German younger generation is very open and susceptible for criticism towards the role that Germany played during World War II. Just like, basically they are of the same opinion.
Okay, one example is Japanese people not like him, okay? Younger people, or including me, they had none of education, World War II.
Right.
Okay, so nobody knows what happened
Right.
in World War II. This is their issue. So Korean people say something, Chinese people say something.
Right.
We do not know.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. So there are many sides of
German people studied a lot about Hitler, what they did, right?
Yes, a lot.
But Japanese people do not, none of Japanese, they no education.
So,
There's one reason, right? Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of debate, a lot of people, very
No
open
debate.
debate. Yeah.
No debate.
A lot of debate, and not only within Germany, but also within Germany and for the rest of the world, with the rest of the world.
This is the problem.
But
That's the reason I just asked him to make presentation my school a couple of years ago to Korea, Chosen, and he did. But none of Japanese people, none of those knows about Korea-Japan history.
Really?
Yeah, Korean history or Japanese history. We don't know. None of Japanese people don't know. Very few people know.
Right.
Very few,
True
not
history.
a few. Very few people know.
Because
But, so Sonoda-san, true history. There is no such thing as true history, I think.
yeah, some people say like that, but I think some sort of truth exists in the record anyway. Otherwise, we cannot discuss nothing about the histories, right? So, for example, this is very rough example, but there will be the people who say yes, and there is another people who say no. And there should be the truth in the middle of the yes and no, somewhere. Or maybe over there or whatever. Right? But actually, there are more histories record exists, actually, on every things. So that it is possible to, like I say, expect, predict, not predict, imagine where roughly exists, the truth exists between
Probably
those
somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
many records.
Right, exactly. So that depends on where you stand. So and from which perspective you look at.
Yes. So that the word which I used, true, is not correct. Then I like to say supposed to be the possibly the close to the truth.
Like what likely happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but even if such kind of history was not is not taught in the Japanese schools, especially talking about the relationship with Korea or China, while both of two countries were very close to the Japan, and they had the most strongest relation affect to the Japanese history also, but somehow the Japanese the school does not teach. Very shallow surface items were taught to the children. But there is a reason why they did such kind of things. So that the root cause also connected with such kind of phenomenon of the education system in Japan, with the history between Japan and Korea, or Chosen. So that again, component woman issue itself does not exist itself. That issue is connected with other many issues between Korea and us. So that it may be it doesn't have to do with you about those histories except the component woman, but we cannot split this issue and other all issues between us.
Usually fine.
So that there are so many things to the Japanese government have to solve. And one of the issues is a component, and this issue is connected with all other issues. And such education issue is also, and also can I say, 生活保護? What can I say? Life compensation?
What do you
By
want
the
to say?
Japanese
What do you want
government?
to say?
The Japanese, we have the system
Benefit?
that
Benefit?
Japanese government pay for the people who cannot earn enough money for their life.
Social security.
Yes, same with the other the advanced countries. But almost all of the people who receive the social the security from the Japanese government are the foreigners. There is the clear statistics.
I know we received.
But,
We received from
yeah,
Japanese
yeah.
government.
And
But it was about $4,000 or something like that. I don't know.
and you know the percentage who got which nationality got the social securities from Japanese government. Yeah, of course, including the Western countries.
Everybody, foreigners gets this.
Not everybody.
Program.
Not everybody. Who are the people who can meet the requirement to receive?
You mean resident also, right?
No. Actually, so for example,
Who get this?
probably people in from Indonesia who were in concentration camp. They
Are you receiving?
Yeah.
Who receive it?
My grandmother received some payment.
Japanese.
I think social security includes
He is talking
everything.
about social
right?
security.
Like every month.
Every month, yes.
For
The people who cannot afford their life by themselves, Japanese government pay for that.
this benefit.
Minimum
Social benefit.
Social benefit, yes.
Who's getting?
80% the Chinese and the Koreans. Why?
Where? In Japan or
In Japan.
In Japan.
Why they get it?
Why?
Which type of visa they got it? permanent visa?
Yes, permanent. So a special type of the permanent visa,
Special
which
type.
was issued to
What
the
is
only Korean people.
What is it?
Which was
Permanent-
that system
permanent
was
visa.
established after the World War II.
Permanent visa? Resident
Special type of the permanent.
But it has nothing to do with the war, right? It's nothing to do with history. It's just
That is also connected with some solution, and also the event which will happen after World War II. So I try to explain.
They are not
simply,
Japanese?
but not Japanese.
Korean.
Korean or Chosen people, including the North and South, both of them. And then why I say such kind of thing is there are so many Japanese people who suffer in their life, but they are very hard to get such kind of money from the Japanese government, while the chosen people get the monies. And
But it's based on not based on today the fact that they cannot find a job, but based on the war history. Therefore, they get a payment.
Apparently, that system doesn't have a relationship. So just the people who have a right to live in Japan,
Right.
and who cannot afford their life by themselves.
Right. Okay. But we have
in a variety of the reasons.
Right. So we also we have the same situation in the Netherlands where immigrants are actually receiving the major part of the social benefits. I think in our case, I can't speak for Japan, but in our case, it's because they have a weaker position on the labor market, and we have a it's easier to succeed on the labor market if you are Dutch, unfortunately, than if you are an immigrant. And of course, there are also people who abuse the system. You cannot avoid that. Cannot avoid that.
So after the World War II, our law system was still let's say enough to do the correct support for the people who live in Japan, and especially talking about the what do you say the system, the payment.
Social security system.
Social security system itself also include
Social
the insurance of. So the people who cannot
What they
earn
get?
money,
How
生活保護.
Or life.
That is a part of the social.
Poverty benefit.
Okay. So
yeah,
if you
simply
live below the poverty
people,
line.
Right. Simply people who cannot earn enough money.
Right.
Japanese government pay for it.
But those people are legal immigrants.
Probably, yeah. Otherwise you
Legal, but there is a the interview and documenting the check and the interview also, and also there are so many the poor Japanese exist, but it is very very hard for them to get that system.
Those
money.
people legal.
The ordinary Japanese, and also but while the current based on the current statistics, which was obviously opened by the Japanese ministry, I guess roughly speaking, 80% of them.
80% of what?
80% of the people who received the money from Japanese
But
government.
legal immigrant.
Even if legal, it is not fair.
Why not?
Because there are more Japanese people, more poor Japanese people. Based on the ratio of the Japanese
No,
people.
my question, discrimination something?
Not discriminations. It is a contamination of the system.
What do you mean contamination?
There are so many the Korean peoples inside the Japanese system.
So what?
So that they try to do the they try to favor the judgment
privilege?
when they.
Say something.
That's true. That is a statistic.
It does make sense.
So, but the reason why was we accepted more than 2 million of refugees from Chosen Peninsula after during the Chosen War, And also after
Like
the Civil War.
you said, very similar opinion. Like Trump said, Trump is racist, okay, and white people is advantage, and he's strong discrimination for black people. And sort of opinion you're talking about, right? And Japanese should get
So that
advantage.
the ordinary Japanese
You should say
people
you are talking about Japanese people should get advantage.
No,
No.
I don't say that.
I don't understand what you mean.
Everybody who live in Japan, who have a right to live in Japan, can have a right to receive the money
Right.
if they fulfill the requirement of that.
Mm.
But based on that requirement and also the situation right now, the situation is not.
But I can easily imagine that a lot of Japanese don't want to actually hold up their hands to receive support because they feel it is a burden to society, and therefore
There may be such kind of situation because of the nature of the Japanese.
Right.
But even if that is so, but still the ratio itself is abnormal. 80%. Why? So that now many of the Japanese people get angry about that situation. And also, this is just one example. And there are other example is about 健康保険
health insurance.
health insurance. This is topics related with the Chinese people who visited in a short time in Japan. And if the people who live in more than 3 months, they have a right to get the health insurance if they pay monthly payment to the Japanese government. But there is a special exception for the Chinese people that if they declare how the relatives they have, they don't need to live in Japan. If they have the relative in China, and if they declare how many relatives they have on the papers, and the Japanese government never checks that. So that as a result of that, one people can declare, I have 30 relatives or 100 relatives on the papers. As a result of that, even if they live in the modern the 3 months and they got some benefit for the social health insurance, and at that moment they pay. But after that, there was cashback from the yearly cashback from the government because they have 100 relatives, and he or she have, and the Japanese government never checked that. So that at this moment there are so many advisor to use that system. It's a kind of
I don't
ridiculous things.
I don't understand, but
So eventually, such kind of activities of the foreign people, especially the very limited countries, nations.
This is kind of
damaged.
enacting law problem. Enacting law problem, law creation problem.
Yeah.
But this is not Chinese, but law itself causes problem.
Right. So as I said, after the World War II, still our such kind of a law system is not complete. Protect our own countries.
This is not Chinese problem. Law, just enacting law problem.
But especially so many Chinese people do that.
Lot of things are not only the kind of health insurance, but
So that yes, the root cause is the incompleteness of the law system of Japan. But even if so, that is not the good things.
we don't, okay, we are Japanese democratic country, but we have a lot of irregular, misleading law, but nobody, many people not complain or kind
Because
of...
nobody knows. Almost no normal, ordinary Japanese people know about it.
We don't have kind of system, collecting direction, how to going to change law. We don't have system. Usually, policy maker need to consider for changing law, but just like you said, many laws has a lot of problem now. But almost all Japanese no complain to change laws.
But as I said, this is just one example of the huge issues between two countries.
But not only China, not only Korea, but just domestic lot of issues we have. So
But as I said,
that's the reason that I just recommend.
Yeah, this is the general issues, not only for those specific nations, but the actually who received that.
This is actually like Dutch. They're going to have a deliberative democracy. The ordinary people get together, exchange opinion, propose to government. Japanese, we don't have kind of system. Australia exists, Dutch exists, and British America exists, but no Japanese.
Right. So that is also another issue. Yeah. So that so many incompleteness in the law system.
But anyway, today also 2 minutes left, but Robert could not persuade you for Korean issue.
I also know very little about this history. I think in general, two things when it comes to debating from the or culturally speaking. I think that there is in general a tendency to think, okay, there is not a right or wrong, there is just difference of opinion, and things are relative. The fact that something is not right doesn't make it automatically wrong, and something that's wrong is not automatically right. There is a lot of gray. And there is also the matter of empathy. I think that's very important in order to persuade somebody. So it's more a matter of the heart and because actually and that maybe that's also part of the fact that people are basically primarily individuals. That means that basically I start the moment I'm born, and I do not, of course, to some extent, I stand on the shoulders of my parents, but I'm not my parents, and I'm not my great grandparents. And to some extent, you could say I have responsibility, but to the other extent, also that's not me. I didn't do it. I was not involved. I was not even born yet. So we take much more distance, I think, than in Japan, where you're basically part of this this circle. Right?
Yeah. So during the at least before the Meiji era, we Japanese people grew up the children by the community, not by the parents. So such kind of a community was very, very strong. So that after the Meiji Restoration, the Meiji government started the education system, which hired the English UK system and the French system. But at the very first moment, nobody tried to go to the school because there are strong the community and also education mechanism in the communities, and also the private schools. So that at that moment, there are so many private schools. What I would like to say is that is one of the explicit example of the idea which we Japanese people rely on during the era and maybe at the beginning of the Meiji era. We all rely on this idea, this multi-layered circle.
The concentric circles.
Yes, we are all together. We have to help together. So, and the Korean people, Chinese people, Taiwan people, all of them are in the same
circles. Right. Because the sense of community, etc., is also very strong in China. I heard. Talking with some people who were born and raised there, they also go out there and they even go to work and leave their children just playing in the area, and there is there are other people in the same area who look after the children.
Right.
Okay, obviously, Japanese observe Korean people is inferior than Japanese people. Inferior. Contemptuous. Inferior. Okay. So, Chinese, no. Chinese is different. Not contemptuous. Okay? But Korean people are just contemptuous for them. Inferior people. This is more than 100 years. All the way around until now. So this is, I don't know why, but Chinese is different. Okay, Japanese and Japanese respect Chinese, but also contemptuous and respect both.
Right.
But Korean all the way around, contemptuous, inferior people. Right?
I think actually when you truly look very deep in the heart of people.
Exactly, that's the reason why behind their mind, Korean people recognize kind of contemptuous Japanese mind. So they are not willing to coordinate with Japanese.
I studied development economics, and with the objective to work in Africa. And the moment I went to Africa, when I arrived in Africa,